welcome back, everybody. I hope you're rested after that quick break. We are really lucky to have Bill Pettit with us. I managed to get introduced to Bill about 4 years ago when I was just starting out looking in this direction and was told that Bill was the person to speak to regarding post-traumatic stress from a principles perspective. And through that, we ended up having a conversation, and from there Bill had a wonderful idea. Well, he'll explain in a second about a thing called the Missing Link for Veterans, which is available on YouTube, and Paul's already shared the link in the chat. And while we did it with veterans in mind, actually it works. It has relevance for every single one of us. So I'm not going to get in Bill's way anymore. I'll hand over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. People that know me know that I can talk for 3 hours without stopping. And so I'm just going to get as quiet as I can and know that I'm going to aim for just about 20 to 25 minutes at the most. So we have time for questions. I'm going to ask people, maybe it's been asked before, that you listen as softly as you can, as gently as you can, that you listen and like you listen to music that you enjoy. When I take my 15-minute bike ride 3 times a week, I either listen to, and some of these people you won't know probably, but I either listen to Bob Dylan or Paul Simon or Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band or Delbert McClinton. But I went on Sunday and I asked my Siri to play Gregorian chant. That was my Sunday. But I ask you to listen like you listen to music, and to, I'm going to say some things that may even your brain might have a reaction to. It could be as simple as yeah, but, or what, but I'd ask you to just thank your brain for sharing its comments. Our brain is a good computer, but it is a computer. And when Ofer was talking about his growing appreciation of mind, you can see that when you're talking about the spiritual, when you're talking about the formless, it's hard to talk about because you're in form, trying to talk about something that has no form. But to me, it's becoming more and more obvious that I'm not just this body. I'm not this body. I'm in this body. I'm of this body, but there's something more than that. And you might say, what does that have to do with post-traumatic stress disorder? And it has a lot to do with it, because if what's true, what the principles point to is that there is a oneness. Physicists talk about this. There's no separation from everything that is in form is the same energy in a different disguise. If we really understood that as human beings, there'd be no us's and them's. It'd just be us's. But we're on a journey as human beings. Now, sometimes people think that we haven't evolved at all in consciousness. But you think about 2,000 years ago, people were filling the Colosseum with 50,000 people to watch gladiators fight to the death. Now, we still might have mixed martial arts and American football, but we don't have gladiators fighting to the death while 50,000 people cheer. We don't have people being Christians, anybody, you could choose one of whoever the other is, put in there with no weapons at all to and be eaten alive by wild lions, wild animals. Even 200 years ago, 1820, there was practically no place that women could vote. There was legal slavery in I forget how many countries, including the United States, Canada, and England, and all over the world. Now, we're still killing people. We're still killing each other, even though we can go billions of miles and see things back from that. But we're moving in a direction. And I do think that understanding these universal principles, realizing them, I saw this last week, my book title, and I may take the realizing off to make it shorter, but what came to me was realizing universal principles births infinite hope. Infinite hope. And a fresh start for psychiatry and psychology. For those that don't know me, very quickly, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm retired. I'm 79 and a half years old. I'll be 80 in May. I feel younger in my spirit than I did when I was 40. Bill Moyer interviewed Joseph Campbell when he was in his 80s, and he said, how do you deal with the changes in the body? And he said, you know, if being a light bulb is a metaphor of being a human being, I'm identifying much more with the light and much less with the bulb. In my experience of over 50 years of working with people, and I've worked with people from just about every major war. I mean, not the Civil War, obviously, in the United States, that was 1860, but I mean, World War II on. In a way, it could be easily said, why do I have anything to talk about? Because I haven't been in combat watching my friends and fellow men be mowed down or blown up, like Ofer lost all 9 of his colleagues, one dying one at a time in his arms with his left eye hanging out of his head by a cord. Haven't had that. I've worked with people that were snipers. I've worked with people that at 18 years of age were on a patrol and told to tie a little girl that they found from the village because she might go back and they might lose troops, to tie her to a tree and take her life. I could tell story after story of people I've worked with, but the answer is not psychological, it's spiritual. Ofer pointed to it very beautifully in his journey, and the idea that it's a journey. You know, we lost in the United States and Vietnam, we lost 58,000 people. God knows how many people the Vietnamese lost. But we lost 58,000 people on the ground that were killed. And by 1995, over 300,000 had committed suicide. 5 times as many as died on the ground. That was 26 years ago. And they had all these programs that they built at the VA hospitals where they had people sitting around talking about their life experience, their war experience, and the levels of suicide. They finally shut down those programs. because just talking about your experience, if you don't have understanding, a spiritual understanding, will ravage you, will ravage you. A story just came to mind. I was teaching the 3 principles as a psychiatrist. I was part of my armamentarium. And I had this man who was a Vietnam veteran who had post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms earlier in his life. And he had become a police officer. And as he got in, they were pretty much he was doing okay. He was married, and then he got into a contentious relationship with his supervisor, and he started having flashbacks again, and he didn't have the understanding. And so I'm going to make this quick because of my time, but he started to get better. And when I'd see him, he'd be getting more peaceful and more joyful. And then he'd have a sudden crash. And then I'd see him a couple of times, and then he'd have a sudden crash. And I said to him, I said, Joe, I'm puzzled. I said, not that it's always directly even, but most people that I work with, they don't have these crashes like you do as much as frequently. And I'm just puzzled. Please don't hear judgment. I want us to just reflect going forward. And he said, oh, okay, Doc, okay. Now, the next time he came in, he didn't make any connection to what I'd said, but he said, Doc, I probably should tell you that I go to the groups at the VA. They have, I go there every once in a while. And I said, you do? He says, yeah, I go there every few weeks and every 3 or 4 weeks. And I said, well, how does that work for you? And he said, well, not really too good, because every time I go there, I usually start throwing up later that night. I get vomiting and I get a migraine headache, and I always miss at least 1 day of work where I have to call in sick, and at least 2. That's why I don't go every week to the groups. And I said, well, what do you do in the groups? He said, well, we talk about our experiences in the war. I said, Joel, how soon after our sessions do you start throwing up? He said, well, Doc, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, how soon, you haven't been telling me, but how soon after our sessions do your migraines start? He said, well, they don't. He said, well, in fact, after my sessions with you, I usually feel really lighthearted, and I feel hopeful, and I feel my spirit, I don't know how to say it, but my spirits are lifted. I said, well, how long does that last, Joel? And then his face almost turned white. He said, oh my God. They usually last till I go to my next group at the VA. Doc, do you think they're connected? I said, what do you think, Joe? This is going to be disconnect. Oh, as far as, the only time I ever faced a gun, I actually had to put a man in the hospital who, no, there was a man who took his gun and he was threatening to kill his wife, and he was an ex-policeman, threatening to kill his wife and 27-year-old daughter. And he had a massive heart attack and fell to the ground as he held a gun, telling them that he was going to shoot them. So when he got recovered from his heart attack, 5 of us went in to tell him that we were going to have to refer him to the hospital. In retrospect, I wonder why we weren't referring him to the jail. But he had talked his daughter into bringing the daughter that he threatened to kill into bringing a bag in, a sack that she must not have looked in, because as 5 of us, the administrator and people came around him to tell him that he had to go to the hospital across town, the psychiatric hospital, where I would be his doctor. He reached down into the thing and he brought out a gun and he pointed it to each one of our foreheads one at a time. And I didn't see my life go in front of me. I did see the headlines. Man kills 5 people in hospital and then himself. And I knew to keep my mouth shut for a change. Now, I don't experience that as traumatic, and that's not anything like being in war, in battle, where every day you're wondering if this is your last one. But the key is an understanding that the only thing that exists is right now. It's one thing to know that intellectually, but when I have seen people, veterans or people that have been terribly sexually abused, start to have realizations that allow them to see that the only thing that exists is right now. Past doesn't exist. 5 minutes ago does not exist, except as a memory. 5 minutes from now does not exist. In fact, infinity is just an infinite number of nows. It's not complicated. And there is a oneness that we're part of. We're not separate. Now, I can see why some people look at the principles and they think that it's a religion, and it's not a religion. There's no dogma, there's no shoulds, there's no rituals. But I can see why, because it is a theology. What Mr. Banks saw when he came out of his experience, he said, I've seen what people call God is. I've seen what life is, and I've seen how the two are connected. And a lot of people don't talk about that because it's uncomfortable for them. But what he saw was that what's behind life, what people call God is pure love and understanding. That's different from the celestial dictator that I grew up with, who was willing to send his children to an eternity of torture and punishment that no parent would ever do to their child. I'm not telling people to give up their beliefs, but I'm making it clear that what Sid talked about was that what's behind life is pure love and understanding. That's at the source. There's no judgment. There's no judgment. That even as we look to see what we see, that people, it doesn't mean you don't try to stop injustice, and then we just try to find a way to stop killing each other, and we start seeing how we're all the same energy in a different disguise. I encourage people to watch, those that haven't, to go through the missing link for veterans. I did wake up one morning and I had this idea, and it just came to me from what we'll call universal mind, which is the key to coming through. Post-traumatic stress disorder is not a thing. It's a description of someone who is terrified by their memories and terrified by their experiences that their memories create. This book, The Missing Link, the 5 of us, Ophir and David, Brad Gallup, who you'll hear from later, and Judy Sedgman, it came to me to contact them, the other 4 people, and we ended up going through this entire book in different times, 1 page at a time. It's so powerful. 1 page at a time. And then and then we each were free to comment. Everyone in this world shares the same innate source of wisdom, but is hidden by the tangle of our own misguided personal thoughts. Even flashbacks, as people have learned when they occur, to do just what Ofer talked about, to wait. The flashback will last at maximum 4 to 5 minutes. And every time that it is allowed to pass through without being fought or fed, in Star Trek terms, it will lose some of its force field. And I can't tell you how many people I've treated with post-trauma symptoms that had that day that they came and they said, Doc, you know, those memories that have haunted me, they've lost their force field. They're neutral now. They have no power over me. I've seen them for what they are. They're thoughts. They're, as George Pransky used to say, they're mirages. Now he says they're real mirages, but they are mirages. And when people have that moment where the force field is gone, they don't have to, their symptoms of, quote, PTSD start to dissolve over time, incrementally, because they don't have to avoid having that memory triggered anymore. They don't have to watch where they go, what books they read, what TV shows, what movies. And it's important for me to have people hear there's no shoulds. There's no shoulds. But there is a place within every human being that cannot be broken. It cannot even be scratched. It is pure. It stays pure. It cannot be injured. So it's important. I know so many are told that they're broken, that you'll never heal. That's nonsense. The same divine, or whatever you want to call it, universal energy that grows my lemon tree, that heals incredible wounds and physical wounds, is at work to guide us to wholeness and healing. That is, it's not even healing, it's just a realization of the wholeness and the pure uninjured spirit that is always present. I'm going to end on something that is fresh for me. I love nature. I love watching nature shows, and I see it more and more as universal mind in a form, in energy. And this is a show on African in Kenya. And as a kid, you always heard that there were oases. There were places in the desert where there's water. And I never knew how that could be possible. And this show, which I've only watched the first 10 minutes, and I'm so excited, it shows that oases, how many people know this? You can do something. Oases are formed by termites and elephants. They create oases. The termites go way into the ground, and think of how many it takes to build this huge mound, sometimes 8-10 feet high. And it has nutrients, otherwise the elephants would die. But it brings these nutrients from deep inside. It makes these huge mounds, and then the elephants come and they eat the mound, and they survive. And then water comes and it makes mud. And it said that sometimes when a family of elephants come, it takes away a ton of mud that's caked on them to protect them from the sun. A ton. And eventually this hole gets bigger and bigger, and the water and it feeds all these other oases are formed by termites and elephants. If that isn't proof that there's universal mind and that it doesn't, whatever it is, it has a sense of humor, I don't know what else. And if it can do that, if termites and elephants can form oases, there's a place within us which cannot be touched. And it is that same place. So I've ran over, I'm sorry. I could judge myself that I didn't get what I wanted to get in, but it's the way it's the best I could do today. And so I'm going to stop and take questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Bill? Well, while you're thinking, I've potentially got one, Bill. I've heard you in the past talk about how we as human beings have got comfortable with the idea of what physical pain is trying to do for us. And I've heard you talk about that in relation to mental pain as well, and what that is trying to do for us as human beings in a beneficial way. I was wondering if you'd be able to elaborate on that a bit.
I certainly can, and please, anybody that's listening, know that I'm not asking you to believe anything that I say. I mean that. It's not a trick. I'd ask that you listen reflectively from a place of wisdom that's inside of all of us. There's a place of truth. I love the Hebrew saying that words spoken directly from the heart reach the heart. I love that. But I think that truth and the heart are in the same, they're in the same apartment or duplex. That when you speak from the truth, it resonates with people. They can't wrap their cognition around it. When I first heard about the three principles, I knew it was true. I knew it was pointing to something that I had gone in and out of clinical depression, even without having been in combat. I had managed to put myself into clinical depression in and out for 20 years. And saw 6 different psychiatrists who were good people, but they didn't understand what Sid Banks knew and what he had come to see. And so they did the best they could. They helped me through, but they didn't teach me that I was whole inside, that they didn't teach me that I had a guide inside, that there was a spiritual guidance system that was within me, guiding me every moment of my life. If I could slow down my thinking enough, get present enough in my life to hear it. I used to say you have to slow down your thinking so you can hear wisdom. Nah, I was wrong. I was wrong. All you have to do is to fall into the present as best as you can. And your thinking can't stay sped up when you're present. If you watch children play, we are one of 2 places every moment of our life. We're either in our thoughts or we're in our life. When children are playing, or human beings are at play, they're thinking, but they're not in their thoughts. My late wife in 1984, what's that, 37 years ago, I was still trying to figure out what these 3 principles were. I was studying with Roger Mills and Rick Suarez and Sid occasionally. And my wife, my late wife, looked at me and she said, Bill, you know, it's really simple. And I went, what? Because and I was trying to figure it out. I said, how is it simple, honey? And she said, well, I really see that moment to moment in my life, I'm on one of two places. I'm either in my thoughts or I'm in my life. Wow. And to hear Ophir talked about when he had that somatic experience of the brain thinking that because those fireworks were going off, he was once again in a rocket attack, that he knew he could stay in his thoughts and try to battle his thoughts created experience, or he could just fall into his life as best as he could and be there with it and know that it would move towards health. So what David is talking about, and Paul earlier had asked me to talk about, it's really foreign to what people think of psychiatric and physical symptoms. So I might as well confess, I call them love letters. I call psychiatric symptoms and physical symptoms love letters. So let me explain. Quit shouting at me, quit throwing things at me. No. That coffee cup, I hope Rick doesn't throw his coffee cup. Okay. Because that's so foreign. It's so foreign, but here's what I just asked people, and there's no shoulds, and there's no judgment. I love Elsie Spittle's statement. If we could just take responsibility for our experience without burden, without judging ourselves, to know that we're creating our experience moment to moment from the inside out. And some thoughts are even unconscious. They just get triggered, but it is coming from the inside out. If we know that, we know to listen for signs that we're in our thoughts rather than in our life. Now, the first thing has to know that you have to know that there is this guide inside. It's universal mind. It's the manifestation of that oneness, of that we're connected to, the energy, the wisdom, the intelligence that's behind life. So we have at least 4 systems that are alarm systems, that if I start getting caught up in my thinking and using these gifts of mind, thought, and consciousness in a way that's not healthy, my mood will go down 100% of the time. I will lose my lightheartedness and my joy and my sense of humor. My mood will go down. My tension level, 100% of the time, I will lose serenity and peace, and it'll start to go up. My thinking will go from clarity to being muddled. I'll be forgetting things, wondering where my keys are, wondering where my phone is. Where's the damn TV remote? My body, I will start having trouble sleeping because I'm activating a stress response that is meant to be activated up to 30 minutes a day to deal with life-threatening situations. But as Ophir mentioned, if I am spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day in worry, guilt, resentment, upset, unresolved grief, overanalyzing, drivenness, all those different ways, I am activating the fight or flight response. All those 8, 10, 12 hours, creating biochemical dysregulation in my body, affecting my immune system, there's a feedback mechanism through the gut, which actually lowers the pain tolerance by up to 70%. So I could feel pain all over my body. That's what happens in fibromyalgia. The pain is real. But to start to see these symptoms, these things that we call symptoms, as loving alarms that are trying to just point us to get in our life as best as we can. You know, the easy example is if I put my hand on a burner that somebody accidentally left on, it is a really good thing that I feel really bad pain really fast. Is it not? Do I have some nods here, the people that are with me? It's really good because as fast as I pull my hand off, I minimize the tissue damage to my hand. There's actually a neurological state called syringomyelia where people don't have the Spain fibers. So they don't know that their flesh is being burned until they smell the burning flesh. But you and I, most people are lucky enough that we feel the pain. When we feel physical, emotional, and pain, it's a gift. It's trying to wake us up. Now, does that mean that you don't, if you have to take some pain pills, or if you don't have, if you have to, when I had people that were having panic attacks and until they could hear, or that were having hallucinations, and I could teach them that hallucinations were just thoughts with special effects, until they learned what a flashback was, that it had no power to hurt them if they could just stay present like Ofer learned and let it pass. I had no problem using medications. And my job was never, people would sometimes come to me because they'd heard about things that people that had found a deep level of mental well-being, they'd say, I'm coming to you because I want to get off my medications. And I'd say, well, if that's your goal, then maybe you should go find a different psychiatrist. Because my goal is never to get people off their medications. They say, what? Really? I said, no. My goal is one thing, to help people find the deepest level of peace possible and to live there as much of their life as they can incrementally. We were talking earlier as I was preparing, if you only move 2 inches a day or 3 centimeters a day forward, over 5 years, you've gone a hell of a, you've made a trip, you've made a journey. And to the degree that we can be grateful for every little bit that we see, I encourage you, besides the missing journey, the missing link for veterans, which is on YouTube, and they'll give you the access. I also encourage people to go, and David, I'd ask that you share www.sidbanks.com. And I ask people to watch the Long Beach lectures twice through. Twice through, because the second time you'll have different eyes and ears that you had the first time. And I can't tell you how many people, in fact, this one lady that I agreed to have her send her home the next day, she'd made a very serious suicide attempt and almost killed herself. And I actually told her I'd send her home the next day if she would watch those twice through, 4.5 hours overnight. And she said, fine, I'll watch your fucking videos. And if anybody would have known that I promised that I'd discharge her the next day, I probably would have lost my privileges at the hospital, because she'd been in coma for 3 days until that afternoon, almost died. And I came, as some of you have heard this story, she had been terribly sexually and physically abused in relationships as a child and throughout her adult life. And the next morning, and she really cursed me. She called me every name in the book. And she said, fine, I'll watch your blanking videos. I said, that's all I want you to do is watch my blanking videos. I came in the next day, and I'll finish with this. She came into that next morning, and she sat down, and tears started streaming down her face, both cheeks. And I just sat quietly with her. She was about 38 years old. You could see that she had been, and in her soul was still an attractive lady, but that she'd had a hard time. And she finally spoke, and she said, "Doctor, these are not tears of sadness. They're tears of gratitude. For the first time in my entire life, I feel hope that I can be at peace." And I discharged her. She came back to my groups and to individually for probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 times individually in an 8 to 10 session group. And last I knew, she was fine after years and years and years, because she found that place that was never scratched and can't be scratched. It's inside of all of us, never broken, nothing lacking. The other link that I think, David, is www.sydneybanks.org, because it was Sid's website before he died, and you just feel this for people that wonder about who was this man, is this a cult, is this whatever, it took 23 years after his experience for him to allow us to show videotapes of him, because he did not want followers. He said, "I don't want followers. I'll talk to educators. I'll talk to clergy. I'll talk to mental health professionals." Yeah. So I'll stop there. I'll stop while I'm behind.
You're not behind. No, you're ahead. You're ahead. Does anyone have a question for Bill?
I'll try to be more succinct.
You're amazing.
Realizing universal principles, births. I love the word birth, and Ofer talking about the birth of his new daughter. It births infinite hope, not just a lot, infinite. I've heard that's a whole lot. I don't know.
Definitely. Well, Bill, that was amazing. Thank you very much. Sorry, Martin, looked like you have a question.
Hi, Martin.
Martin, I think you'll need to unmute.
Hi.
Hi, Martin.
Oh, hi, Bill. I'm currently working with an 11-year-old kid who displays all the things we're talking about today. And can you say a bit about sort of, I suppose this is a how-to question, a balance between talking about the guiding side and the psychology is very much in his head. And I'm trying to work from both ways, you know, the thinking bit and the who I am inside. Can you say something about, you know, keeping, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's both, isn't it?
I don't do much psychology. I do mental health education.
Sorry, that's what I'm doing, yeah.
But well, go ahead. Maybe I'm not understanding the question. You're talking about a balance between the spiritual and the psychological.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to get him to see who he is, you know, the mental well-being, the innate health, and also to understand the role of thought, what's going on, how that's creating the distress that he's experiencing. And it's sounding as if to me, and I may be completely wrong here, that the peace comes from knowing that you're okay and quietening down.
Well, let me take a crack at it, okay?
Please.
Okay. First of all, I think 12 years old, 11, I think I've done it with 11. I know I've done it with 12 years old. I've gone through the missing link, 1 page at a time, And this 12-year-old was referred to me because of incredible behavior problems. And the family said, he said to me after we finished going through the missing link 1 page at a time, he said, why isn't this taught in schools, Dr. Pettit?
Yep.
12 years old. Why don't they teach this book in schools? Because he found a deep level of peace. Now, Sid used to say that it's the children that's going to make the difference. If we can reach the children. And I admit that I'm not as versed in iHeart. I'm not as versed as the Spark inside. I'm not as versed in Annie Poole's program in UK. These are all programs for children. I am well versed in my guide inside.
Yeah.
And have you been using my guide inside with him?
Using the Spark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first 4 lessons, here's what I'd like to say to people, whether they have PTSD or not. Imagine, and this will take, I can do this in 2 minutes. You might be able to see this little blue square. There's 8 lessons in this. This is there's a teacher's manual and a student manual for grades 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. And with the pandemic, a lot of people are using this with their children. Okay. Now I'm going to read the first 4 lessons for first graders. And they do the lesson, and then for a week, they would do that lesson, okay, with stories and examples. And I'm going to tell you, if every adult in the world learned these first 4 lessons for first graders, that within 30 days, the world we live in would change profoundly. I had 26 and a half years of schooling, and no one ever taught me these first 4 lessons. If I had been taught them, and if I realized them, my life would have been incredibly more peaceful and gentle. And not only my life, but a whole lot of people's lives around me would have been more peaceful and gentle. So I'm going to read these. Is it okay, David? I know we're on time. Come along and imagine we're all first graders. We just met. We had a little meet and greet. We're all first graders and we're sitting down in first grade. And the teacher comes out and says, "Hi, kids. This week we're going to learn something new. You're going to get excited here. You have a guide inside. It's wisdom and common sense. Everyone, not just the lucky people, everyone has a guide, this guide inside." Ofer said it more than once, just look for the feeling. You can trust your guide. It points you in the right way. Wow, that's exciting. I have a guide inside. So at the end of the week, we go, boy, this has been, Dave, what'd you think? Ann, whoa, Jacqueline, whoa, Johnson, Colette, oh, we have that was fun. Week number 2. Last week, we learned you have a guide inside. This week, we're going to learn that your feelings are created by your thoughts. I thought it was that person that just called me a name or gave me a finger or didn't appreciate me or whatever. I thought it was things that I had for 41 years of my freaking life with 26 and a half years of education. I thought my feelings came from other things that I had no control over. Am I the only one that ever had that idea? Yeah. No. Oh, okay, good. I feel better already. If I hear one more time in a movie, how did some psychologist or psychiatrist say, and how did that make you feel? Oh my gosh. And how did that make you feel? Talk about disempowering under the guise of being compassionate. Now, I will drop back on my judgmentalness and say that people are doing the best they see and they're trying to be compassionate, but they're being disempowering in the process. My thoughts create my feelings, all my feelings, not just Huh? All's a big word, like everyone. All my feelings come from thought. I can let unwanted thought pass by, and well-being is present. Wow. Even unconscious thoughts. If somebody here, let's say Anna or Alex or somebody here was a spitting image of somebody that died just recently, a friend of mine, I might see them, I might see Alex or Anna or somebody else here, Martin, and I feel my stomach turning. But if I just got quiet and got present in my life, I'd realize, oh my gosh, Alex looks just like my friend that got killed last week in a motor vehicle accident. Number 3, third week. We've had 2 weeks now. We've learned that we've got a guide inside and that all our feelings come from thoughts. If I would have just learned that in first grade. Happiness, week 3, happiness is inside of me. When the clouds cover the sun, I know the sun is still in the sky. As the clouds pass by, I know I will see the sun again. When my cloudy thoughts also pass by, when this happens, I feel happy. It's simple to see. Happiness is inside of me. David, there's another, I'm going to ask you to tell people, give people a YouTube to, and I can give it to you later. Dr. Beisser, Beisser, MD, living with disability. Here's a man who in 1952 got paralyzed, quadriplegic with polio 6 months before the vaccine came out, and became a psychiatric consultant at UCLA and lived 50 years quadriplegic. And he talks about how he found out happiness was inside of him. It didn't, even his quadriplegia could not take away his state of mental well-being. Powerful, not a should, but possibility. Speaks to universal mind, I think. Here's lesson 4, real quick. Lesson 4, and I tell people after 38 years, this is the 4th lesson for first graders. And on my good days, I'm a B-. And on my bad days, I'm a D+. For the 4th lesson for first graders, I can see that I'm thinking fast and furious. I can then choose to let it go, I would say, and get present. And I find myself soon being calm and curious. Four lessons for first graders that I didn't learn in 26 and a half years of education.
Well, thanks for that, Dr. Bill. Yeah, that's where we're looking, so that's brilliant. But I'll dig me my guide inside out. Have another
Well,
look.
please don't do it anything on my recommendation. Do it if your wisdoms guide you to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry it took so much time, David.
Not at all, Bill. Not at all. It was all good stuff. So thank you very much indeed. We're just really pleased that you were able to join us and come and help us out with this project. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So welcome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Right, we're about to go into an hour-long break, but in the middle of that, we're hoping to run a breakout session. So I'll let Paul explain how we're going to work that and the timings around it. But in terms of the next session, it will be Aaron and Leela Turner